Hello everyone, my name is Emanuela.
And I'm Robert. Welcome to Tabletop Tutorials.
In this video, we're going to be showing you a partial playthrough of the basic game mode of Cerebria the Inside World. The goal of this video is to show you how to play the game after you've read the rulebook, watched our how to play video, or both. This video does assume that you're at least a little familiar with the rules, so if you aren't, please watch the video linked in the description below first. In this playthrough, I will be playing Team Gloom, with Anxiety acting as a shaper, so I'll be playing second and fourth, with the hidden aspiration of versatility. And Robert will be playing Team Bliss with two spirits, Empathy and Love, playing first and third respectively with the hidden aspiration of Attitude. We will both be using our team-specific starter decks. The game is already set up, so without further ado, let's begin playing.
Empathy's first action is to spend 2 willpower to invoke an emotion. Empathy invokes Optimism on this slot, which is the only emotion slot adjacent to Empathy on the frontier space, and places 1 essence on it from its spirit board. Since there is no opposing emotion in the adjacent realm slot, Bliss gains control of the network of thoughts, because Optimism's intensity influences the realm. For Empathy's second action, it spends 1 willpower to move to the network of thoughts. Next, Empathy spends 2 willpower to take another invoke action. Because Empathy is in a realm space, it is adjacent to 2 emotion slots and can invoke to either one. Empathy places Self-Esteem into the frontier next to Optimism with 1 essence. Self-Esteem's power gives a free upgrade, so Empathy places a blue vibe onto the Extinguish upgrade for Quell. Finally, Empathy draws Cheerfulness and Desire. Now it's Anxiety's turn.
Anxiety is going to absorb first. Because Gloom controls the frontier, Anxiety takes 3 willpower from Commitment and takes the bonus for the sphere, spending 1 willpower for 1 ambition. Anxiety's first action is to spend 2 willpower to invoke Pessimism, whose power lets Anxiety add a +1 token to Pessimism because Bliss has more essence counters on the main board than Gloom does. Pessimism's intensity of 2 is tied to Brightness and Optimism's total intensity of 2, so the Cradle of Senses is now neutral. Anxiety's second action is to move for 1 willpower to the Cradle of Senses. Anxiety's third action is to spend 2 willpower and 1 ambition in order to quell Brightness with Mistrust. Since Optimism's intensity of 1 is less than Pessimism's intensity of 2, Gloom now controls the Cradle of Senses. At the end of the turn, Anxiety draws Dislike and Loneliness. Now it's Love's turn.
As Love's first action, it spends 1 willpower to move to this adjacent frontier. Here, Love spends 2 willpower to invoke Self-Esteem with 1 essence. With an intensity of 1, this gives Bliss control of the frontier. Remember, Self-Esteem gives a free upgrade when invoked, so Love places a red vibe onto the Bolster upgrade for invoke. Now, by controlling this frontier, Love can absorb 3 willpower from Humility and gain 1 essence as the sphere's bonus. Finally, Love uses the Land of Desire's realm action for 1 willpower to add this 1 essence onto Self-Esteem. Pessimism and Bleakness's total intensity of 3 is more than Self-Esteem's total intensity of 2, so the Valley of Motives is still controlled by Gloom. Now that its turn is done, Love chooses to gain 1 ambition instead of drawing cards. It's Anxiety's turn.
With controlling one of the two adjacent frontiers, anxiety absorbs 3 willpower from diligence, gaining an additional 2 willpower as the sphere bonus. Next, anxiety spends 2 willpower to invoke mistrust, whose power gives it a +1 token if invoked in a frontier with an opposing emotion. This now makes the frontier neutral. Anxiety's second action is to spend 1 willpower to use the Willow of Values realm action to convert 1 willpower into 1 essence. For its third action, Anxiety spends 2 willpower to invoke Dislike. Dislike's power allows Anxiety to gain an additional 1 willpower for each vibe on its spirit board's Quell row. It has 1 vibe, so it gains 1 willpower. Finally, Anxiety's end of turn choice is to gain 1 ambition. It's Empathy's turn.
Empathy starts its turn by using the Valley of Motives realm action for 1 willpower to gain 4 willpower. Then, since Bliss controls the Willow of Values, Empathy is able to use the Willow of Values for 0 willpower to convert 1 willpower into 1 essence. Empathy's last action is to spend 2 willpower to invoke Desire. Since Desire is in Bliss's unity, it gains a +1 intensity token, and the Frontier's control goes to Bliss. At the end of the turn, Empathy takes 1 ambition. It is now Anxiety's turn.
Before taking an action, Anxiety spends 1 ambition to upgrade move with haste with a blue vibe. Then, Anxiety absorbs 3 willpower from humility and gains 1 essence as the sphere bonus. Anxiety's first action is to spend 2 willpower to move to the Valley of Motives using haste. For its second action, Anxiety spends 2 willpower to invoke Loneliness. Loneliness's power gains it a +1 token for being the only gloom emotion in this triad. Anxiety's third action is to use the Cradle of Senses for 0 willpower to draw Jealousy. At the end of the turn, Anxiety has 0 willpower, so it gains 1. Finally, it gains 1 ambition. It's now Love's turn.
For its first action, Love spends 1 willpower to move to the Willow of Values. Then, Love uses its Absorb ability to gain 3 willpower from Knowledge. Knowledge's bonus allows for a free upgrade, so Love places a blue vibe on Invoke's Determination upgrade. As its second action, Love uses the Cradle of Senses for 1 willpower to draw Desire. Love then spends 1 willpower to invoke, using its Determination upgrade as its last action, placing Desire here with 1 essence. Because this chain of emotions is tied in length with Bliss's unity that it already had, this counts as a second unity. This means that Desire can gain a +1 token using its emotion power, giving this frontier to Bliss. At the end of the turn, Love takes another 1 ambition. It's Anxiety's turn now.
First, anxiety spends 1 willpower to move to this frontier. Then, anxiety absorbs 3 willpower from commitment, gaining 1 ambition for 1 willpower. For its second action, anxiety uses the Valley of Motives for 0 willpower to gain 4. Anxiety's third action is to spend 3 willpower to fortify the Valley of Motives. Anxiety then spends 2 ambition to gain 1 additional action. Anxiety's final action is to spend 3 willpower to fortify the Cradle of Senses. At the end of the turn, anxiety has 0 willpower, so it gains 1 willpower from the general supply. Anxiety also gains 1 ambition. It's now empathy's turn.
Empathy's first action is to use the Valley of Motives for 1 willpower to gain 4 willpower. Immediately before taking the move action for its second action, Empathy discards Cheerfulness to upgrade move with Haste. Then, Empathy spends 2 willpower to move to the Land of Desires. Now, Empathy absorbs 4 willpower from Creativity, gaining Courage from the emotion deck with Creativity's bonus. For its third action, Empathy spends 1 willpower to use the Network of Thoughts to move Optimism to this emotion slot, making the Land of Desires neutral. By removing Optimism's intensity of 1, control of this frontier is given to Gloom. For an additional action, Empathy spends 2 ambition. For this final action, Empathy spends 3 willpower to fortify the Land of Desires, giving control to Bliss. Of the turn, Empathy gains 1 ambition. It is now Anxiety's turn.
Anxiety first spends 1 ambition to spin the Origin. Next, anxiety absorbs 3 willpower from Creativity, gaining Pessimism as the bonus. This empties the Origin sphere and triggers a revelation. First, we score fragments. The common aspiration is unity. Gloom has a unity of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards.
And Bliss has a unity of 1, 2, 3.
So Gloom wins the common aspiration. Gloom's hidden aspiration is versatility, given for having the most different vibes on emotions on the main board. Gloom has 1, 2, 3 different vibes.
And Bliss has 1, 2. Oh, I misplaced my essence here.
So Gloom wins its hidden aspiration.
Bliss's hidden aspiration is Attitude. Bliss controls 1, 2, 3 realms.
And Gloom controls 1, 2.
So Bliss wins its hidden aspiration.
This means that Gloom adds a major fragment to the identity.
And Bliss adds a minor fragment. Now, we determine the next common aspiration.
First, we flip over the common aspiration just scored. The next common aspiration is awareness.
Because Gloom got a major fragment during the revelation, the opposing team, Bliss, must flip over a common aspiration, removing it from play. Bliss chooses to turn over awareness.
So, the next common aspiration is liveliness. Now, we remove our old hidden aspirations from the game and draw our next hidden aspirations. Gloom's is the aspiration of fortitude.
Bliss's hidden aspiration is liveliness, but it can't match the common aspiration, so they draw the next one instead, which is awareness, and shuffle liveliness back into the deck.
Next, we add fortresses to the identity. Gloom has a fortress that was placed on a prior turn adjacent to the origin sphere that triggered the revelation, so this fortress gets added to the identity for additional points at the end of the game, and the intensity token is removed. Remember to check if this changes realm control. Finally, we refill the origin sphere with 7 willpower and spin the origin. It's still Gloom's turn, so Anxiety's first action is to spend 2 willpower to move to this frontier using haste. Anxiety's second action is to spend 2 willpower to use the network of thoughts to move loneliness to the adjacent emotion slot. Giving Gloom control over the land of desires and this frontier. Even with loneliness moving away, Gloom maintains control over the Valley of Motives. Anxiety's third action is to use the Valley of Motives for 0 willpower to gain 4 willpower. Anxiety's end of turn choice is to gain 1 ambition. It's now Love's turn.
For its first action, Love spends 3 willpower to fortify the Willow of Values and add a +1 intensity token. Then, Love absorbs 4 willpower from Knowledge, placing a yellow vibe on the Extinguish upgrade for Quell as its bonus. The Origin Sphere is empty, so we have another revelation.
The common aspiration is liveliness, and Gloom has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 essence on the board.
And Bliss has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Bliss wins the common aspiration. Bliss's hidden aspiration is awareness, and it has emotion cards on 1, 2, 3, 4 frontier triads.
And Gloom has emotion cards on 1, 2, 3 triads.
So Bliss wins its hidden aspiration.
Gloom's hidden aspiration is fortitude, and it has an intensity of 1 from fortresses.
And Bliss has an intensity of 1, 2.
So Gloom loses its hidden aspiration.
This means that Bliss places a major fragment onto the identity and Gloom places none.
Now we choose the next common aspiration. First, we flip over the common aspiration just scored. The next common aspiration is fortitude. Because Bliss placed a major fragment, Gloom will choose to flip over the aspiration of fortitude, making the aspiration of openness the next common aspiration. Now we remove our old hidden aspirations and select our next ones.
Bliss's next hidden aspiration is unity.
Because Gloom didn't place any fragments onto the identity, Gloom can choose its next hidden aspiration from the top 3 cards from the deck. They are openness, liveliness, and awareness. The hidden aspiration can't match the common aspiration, so openness isn't an option. Between liveliness and awareness, Gloom chooses liveliness as its next hidden aspiration. The other 2 cards get shuffled back into the deck. Now we would add fortresses to the identity, but Bliss placed this fortress this turn, so it cannot be added.
Finally, we add 7 willpower to the empty origin sphere and spin the origin. Love still has two actions. Immediately before its second action, Love discards Cheerfulness to upgrade move with haste using a yellow vibe. Then, it spends 2 willpower to move to the Valley of Motives using haste. Bliss's third action is to spend 1 willpower to use the Network of Thoughts to move Optimism to this adjacent emotion slot. The Valley of Motives is now neutral. At the end of the turn, Love draws 2 cards, Cheerfulness and Optimism.
Rather than continue with the game, though, let's stop here and say that this revelation was the end of the game through scoring the last common aspiration. After adding our fragments to the identity and the active player completes his or her turn, the total points that each team has from their fragments on the identity would be counted and marked on their respective Wheel of Intentions. Gloom has 1 major fragment for 5 points, and 1 minor fragment for 3 points, totaling 8 points.
And Bliss has the same, a minor fragment for 3 points and a major fragment for 5, also equaling 8.
So, we're tied at 8 points to 8 points, and since neither of us has a capping fragment on the identity, this game ends in a tie.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this partial playthrough. Should you still have questions, please don't hesitate to check out the game's FAQ and errata post on BGG, which we'll link below. Or if there's a specific part in this video that you'd like us to explain, please comment on the video with a timestamp. Check out the rest of our channel for more board game tutorials, including both rules